You've been lost in the woods for hours now, stumbling around in the dark. You come around the bend and see two people roasting marshmallows over a roaring fire. They see you coming into the clearing and gesture over to pull up a log. Welcome to Campfire Ashes. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jess. Join us as we tell each other our originally written spooky stories around the campfire and then dive into the lore and legends that inspired them. Is it something that goes bump in the night? Is it something menacing lurking past the tree line? Or is it just weird and otherworldly? You'll find it here on Campfire Ashes.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or right here on the Geekscape Network.
91 Donkey Lane is a magical apartment complex that contains immense power, but lacks intelligent inhabitants.
What is happening?
I'm getting texts.
Why are we getting a lot of texts?
People found out what we did.
Oh, dividing Mike Myers into an infinite amount of tiny Mike Myers?
Listen to 91 Donkey Lane for free on Spotify or your favorite podcasting app. More at 91donkeylane.com. See you there, you donkeys.
And someday you will find me caught beneath the landslide in a blue giant supernova in the sky.
Hell yeah. I was hoping, man, right out the gate, too.
Yeah, no. So we
God
are diving into a movie that I did not remember.
I thought you were going to say the word enjoy because I was going to be with you on that.
Well, you're also, listen, we're going to agree on a lot of things here. So this movie, which according to Wikipedia had a budget somewhere between $60 and $90 million.
I love that they can't tell anybody where the money went with this fucking movie.
and pulled clues. In a whopping 15 mil. God. What a bomb here. This movie, I sent a message.
You just didn't tell anybody what movie it was.
No, that's fine. It's the someday you will find me caught beneath the landslide in a blue giant
Everybody
supernova.
can figure it out.
Yeah.
It's called Oasis, Kyle.
I guess also on when people listen to podcasts, there is it in the title.
It does say the title.
Sorry,
we're talking about Supernova from 2000. Kyle picked this. Kyle, why did you pick Supernova?
It's which we have to talk. It's because of the trailer. It's because of the trailer.
We have to talk about this trailer because the trailer.
Oh boy.
Okay, so this movie originally was conceived under the name Dead Star in 1988, and H.R. Geiger was brought in to sketch it out, and the plot was referred to as Hellraiser in Space.
Listeners, have you heard that before?
Have you? Well, and I mean, that was the irony, right? Because the original release plan was 97, which would have been that this was going to be one of those like twin film anomalies, right? Like there's those things where just for whatever reason, two movies with the exact same basic plot come out. Right. Yeah. And this would have been that in Event Horizon, potential double feature. The whole process of this movie is fascinating, so much so that as I was reading about the production of this movie while it was on my television, I started to realize I don't have to pay that much attention to this movie because the story of this movie, it's kind of like when we tried to do the episode of The Island of Dr. Moreau and we just like ended up just talking about the Lost Souls documentary because we're like, the story of what happened on the set of this movie is infinitely more fascinating because
far more interesting.
Well, because the problem with this movie is like it's a bad movie, but with the exception of like one or two moments, it's not like enjoyably bad. It's just like it's dragging and uninteresting bad.
Yeah.
And like we can't have fun with that.
You have a good point about it being this sort of like production heavy bad thing, and that you don't have to pay that much attention to it, because if you pay attention to it, if you try, and I tried for the first like 20 minutes, they slap you in the face with so much space jargon and mumbo, like stuff that you know what I mean. They're just trying to like over explain and set you up for what life is like on this spaceship, right? And everything has a term and a reason, and now there's a prisoner that is like doing
Mike
like,
fucking Dexter
doing probation on a
no,
spaceship.
not Mike Dexter. Mike Dexter's
James
our villain.
Spader. Yeah,
Not even James Spader. I think.
I thought that James Spader was the
No, James Spader is the guy who was he's a work pilot.
Yeah, you're talking about the computer technician that has like a weird relationship with the computer. Because there's that scene where he's playing chess.
Yeah.
Ooh, Horny Hal?
Yeah.
Sweetie? Horny Hal? Like, holy shit. Oh my God. No, I would say besides what you're saying, Sweetie is maybe a concept that you might enjoy in watching this movie. That's a bad concept that you might enjoy. Well, otherwise, it does. This movie drags ass, and it is brutal.
I'm going to run down the main cast of this movie real quick. You got to keep in mind
also that this movie was shot in 97, right?
Shot in 97, sat on a shelf for like 3 years.
2 years. It didn't come out until 2000. Because they were... I just want to prime the listeners. Think about where these people were in their careers in 97.
Listen, you had James Spader. You had Robert Forster. You had Lou Diamond Phillips. You had, I never know how to pronounce this guy's name, Peter Fancelli, who is Mike
Fasinelli.
Dexter. Fancinelli. You had Robin Tunney from Empire Records and The Craft. And, I mean... Angela Bassett did the damn thing. Like, she did the thing in this movie. This movie is bonkers, and it's like all right, let me reset here. So, we have to talk about this movie to understand this movie. So, this script gets written, they bring in Walter Hill to direct it, who has made a multitude of pretty good, violent, R-rated action movies.
Yeah.
They kept cutting down his budget because they didn't like what he was doing with this script that the president of MGM was really close with.
Yeah.
And the big catalyst, I have the quote here from Walter Hill, was over a test screening. And he said, in post, we had a tremendous amount of special effects we still needed to do, and they decided they wanted to preview the movie without any effects. And I told them that was insane. It's a science fiction movie. The effects have to be added, but they wanted to see how it played. I told them it would play like shit. It would be terrible. It would be a very bad preview, and you will give up on this movie. These previews under these conditions are strictly political. Are you saying you don't want to preview the movie? And I have to say, you own the goddamn thing. If you want to preview it, I can't stop you, but I'm not going to go. And they saw that as defiance. And so they previewed it even though he told them not to. The audiences hated it, and then they fired him for making a bad movie. Brought in Jack Schroeder to take over, who you may know is the director of Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge.
God bless.
He comes in, does uncredited reshoots. The next preview does a little bit better, but they're still not happy with it. And then get Francis Ford Coppola, who owns stock in MGM at that time, said he'll re-edit it. He re-edits it.
What was he not doing at that point in time?
Well,
do you know what I mean? What was he not busy with?
I'll tell you what he was not doing at the time. He just finished making Jack, which ruined his career.
Oh, poor guy. Give me anything. I'll save Supernova.
Let's not say poor guy to Francis Ford Coppola. Let's say fuck Francis Ford Coppola, because this movie just really shows what a silly, stupid place Hollywood can be.
Yeah. So here's the big thing, though.
Correct.
So they re-edit the film. It gets a negative testing, and it doesn't get the PG-13 rating that the studio wants. There's a
Can you
quote
imagine?
So there's a quote from the creature designer, and he had all of his special effects cut from the movie. And this explains everything. And then we can talk about the trailer, because I think this is the direct connection to the trailer and everything else we're going to talk about. He said Walter Hill wanted this film to be as grotesque, strange, and disturbing as it could be, while MGM saw the film as a sexy, hip film in space, and they didn't want a makeup effects film. And the fact that this movie's trailer starts with the sounds of Sugar Ray's fly.
Is there anything sexier? And is there anything sexier?
And just
Maybe Crazy Town?
And just depicts the movie as like, look at these sexy people just hanging out
in
like,
space.
There's
Fucking
back
in
the
space.
Day,
The movie.
If this was a more famous movie, because this is kind of like forgotten to the sands of time as well.
Yeah,
like
completely.
If this was a bigger movie, if this was like a more successful film, back in the day when that guy would like re-edit The Shining to look like coming of it, like a family, like a wholesome family film. There's a way where you could start with what they already did with the trailer and literally make this look like the sexiest rom-com in space you've ever seen. Just taking like the shots of Troy out of context, like this Lost Connections. Like, I almost want to do it, but it would be for an audience of 0. Like, no one would know the context.
And also the big problem with the trailer, one of the other big problems with the trailer, is that it's almost made up of footage that wasn't in the movie.
Yeah.
So we have like, that's all like cuttings. That's all like little pieces of fat that they were just like, we shouldn't have cut this, but now it's off and on the floor. Let's just put it on this trailer to Sugar Ray's fly. It's absolutely crazy.
What you got there, sport?
There's a lot of things that this trailer doesn't show. One of them I'll talk about in a second, because I just cracked open a little space dust to talk about.
I could have gotten one of those easily, and I didn't even think about it.
I was thinking you might have. I was thinking that you might, but I that's okay. One of these days. What do you got?
I have. Let me get it ready for the fucking Patreon. The Nebuchadnezzar.
Is that Omnipolo?
You probably know better than I do. Omnipolo, yeah.
Dude,
I've had this in my beer fridge. It's an Imperial IPA. It's quite good. I had it in my beer fridge because I was like, this will be perfect for whatever I pick for spring break. I don't remember what I picked for spring break, but it didn't fit. And I was just going through my beers, and I was like, oh, Peter Fasinelli's in this. He's a Chad. And I was thinking about the Nebuchadnezzar from The Matrix, which is the name of the ship for the uninitiated. And so it just felt like it clicked way better than anything that I could have hoped for.
Well done. And it's a good beer. I know. I've had that
yes.
beer. It's good.
I'll tell you this much about this movie. While we're talking about the trailer, I will say that MGM, if they wanted a hip, sexy film in space, boy, did that translate to, we need some zero gravity fucking in this movie.
We need it.
Because
twice.
We
so
get it
nice
twice.
They did it twice.
It was like, what is happening?
That's just the fuck room.
Yeah,
that's just the fuck room of the ship. Like,
Literally, you go in that room and it's zero gravity because the walls are sticky.
It's
But I think millennials built that ship. I think that like there's this weird sex positive thing that they're like, no, if their astronaut's going to be up there, they need a fucking fuck room.
Yeah. This movie, the amount of times that I was just like, what is happening? And I watched this not on Tubi, but Pluto, which I kind of regret, because Pluto definitely has much longer commercial breaks than Tubi.
I told you, get Ghostery. Tubi is ad-free for me now.
But I watch everything on my television, so...
This is the first time I used Ghostery to watch a movie, and I had to... Full disclosure... I took zero time to watch these movies this week. I watched Supernova at 5 a.m. this morning.
Wow.
On Tubi.
That's brutal.
With Ghostery. Perfect. I actually mistimed starting the movie because I was thinking commercials, even though I forgot I downloaded Ghostery. So I finished.
You had 20 minutes to spare.
I did.
So
you're like, I'm on top of the world.
I was just waiting for Hunter to wake up, being like, okay.
You could have showed this to
over.
Hunter. It's a sexy, hip space movie.
He would have loved the robot. Oh my god! I'm gonna cosplay as the robot.
This fucking movie. I have almost nothing to say about the actual movie because it's so boring, and it actually. So there's a moment where I was like, oh, this could actually be promising, where like they do whatever they have so much scientific nonsense that doesn't make any sense. But they're like, oh, we're gonna dimensionally jump. And the guy's like, are you sure we're going to do it?
Heard of it?
Yeah, we haven't done this in 3 years. Are you sure it's safe? And he's like, yeah, why not? And then the most last week we talked about the dread and the horrifying things that happen in Final Destination. Nothing is more horrifying to me than Robert Forster fused into a glass tube and like screaming to please just kill him.
Just kill me.
I'm just like, what is this? I was like, okay, if this is where this is going, because that's all I knew at that point was that was fucking creepy and weird, and this is Hellraiser in space, and I was like, this movie's gonna get fucking unhinged. And then the crowd goes mild for the next hour. It is just the most
Nothing
dull.
happens.
Also, I want to jump all the way to the end of this movie for a second. We're led to believe that this tube that's only supposed to have one person in it at a time can still fuck up so badly that a person is fused with the glass inside of it. But two people that the computer is like, don't do this. This is a bad idea. All that happens is that their eyes swapped, like,
and then she's pregnant. But you're not sure if that's because they fucked before or if it's because their DNA got swapped during the.
This
movie is so
strange.
Goddamn disappointing. Like,
so let me say
that's the word for it.
The pregnancy thing, I started laughing because
I made the joke, like in my head I made the joke and also she's pregnant. And then all of a sudden they're like, and she's pregnant. I was like, no.
So I've talked about Clone High a million times before, but this literally made me think of a direct quote from Clone High where they're doing a film festival and Abe Lincoln makes what is an incredibly dumb movie that is like half Air Bud, half Rudy about a giraffe playing football. And like at the end of the movie, the giraffe just gets picked up by an alien spaceship, and as he's getting picked up, one of the girls in the stand just goes, "I have your baby in me, giraffe." And like that's all I could think of when like the computer's just like, also you're pregnant, like.
Congratulations. And they're like, thanks, sweetie. Will you be my maid of honor at the wedding? And it's just like, it's a horrible.
It's all so bad.
Actually, I make a joke, but that feels not that far out of the realm of possibility for how this movie ended.
Yeah, listen, I mean,
really
that
insane.
one single moment gave this half a star for me, added a half a star on my Letterboxd rating.
Solid.
Yeah.
Lou Diamond Phillips doing this weird zero gravity push-up thing. Made me so happy. So, like, honestly, if there was a person, well, they weren't the best part. The best part of the movie is still the android to me. But seeing Lou Diamond Phillips just be a part of this.
Look, there's like a good 5 minutes of stuff that I would say, yeah, watch these 5 minutes of this movie. But like watching a 90-minute movie that also had like 3 minutes of commercials every 20 minutes this was just punishing. This was a
Yeah, it was.
Like, Kyle, you've picked some movies that are like a little whatever. This, I was just like, what are we doing here?
No. I'm thankful that there was enough production craziness to discuss.
If this was just like a guy made a movie and no one saw it, we would have nothing to talk about.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. I hope that if that sort of thing interests people, because I do think that that is a portion of what makes it enjoyable for some people, right? Like, I think that the three of us have talked enough about sort of how movies get made and how crazy some of these big, how stupid Hollywood is and all of that, that there is something there.
Well,
if you didn't read the wiki beforehand, you might have shot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, but I mean, like, that's almost
Like
the
me.
bummer that this movie isn't more infamously awful, because, like, yes, a lot of these people are still alive. I would love to watch a documentary about how bad this movie bombed, but it's just like not. The story is more interesting than the noteworthiness of the actual final product, and that's the problem.
Nothing majorly insane or crazy about what the end product is. Like getting there and then having like a bombastic end product is one thing. I mean, that's why The Disaster Artist is so interesting of like a story, right? Like, even though that movie wasn't a huge hit and whatever, but the making of that is one thing, but like, because the end product is what it is. Supernova is just like, geez, it's 60 to 90 million dollars. Like I ever know what that range looks like.
It's funny money at this point, you know.
It is. It's silly. It's silly.
I mean,
It's
this
silliness.
is a noteworthy movie for one specific reason. This is the first Thomas Lee movie after Hollywood retired Alan Smithy as the fake director name when a director...
in the history book somewhere.
You've been lost in the woods for hours now, stumbling around in the dark. You come around the bend and see two people roasting marshmallows over a roaring fire. They see you coming into the clearing and gesture over to pull up a log. Welcome to Campfire Ashes. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jess. Join us as we tell each other our originally written spooky stories around the campfire and then dive into the lore and legends that inspired them. Is it something that goes bump in the night? Is it something menacing lurking past the tree line? Or is it just weird and otherworldly? You'll find it here on Campfire Ashes.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or right here on the Geekscape Network.
91 Donkey Lane is a magical apartment complex that contains immense power but lacks intelligent inhabitants.
What is happening?
I'm getting texts.
Why are we getting a lot of texts?
People found out what we did.
Oh, dividing Mike Myers into an infinite amount of tiny Mike Myers?
Listen to 91 Donkey Lane for free on Spotify or your favorite podcasting app. More at 91donkeylane.com. See you there, you donkeys.
Hey, do you have an idea for a podcast but don't know where to start? Or do you have an already existing podcast that you want to take to the next level? Well, check out WeKnowPodcasting.com. From concept development to theme music to editing to logos, WeKnowPodcasting.com is a one-stop shop for all things pod. Don't hesitate to hit us up. We're very nice.
We had a rough night, guys. Kyle, what are you gonna pop on to try to make the night better?
He's not gonna make it better.
Stop it, Scott.
I
just
know you.
stay
I
and
know
watch
I'm not going to.
And just stay and watch The Island of Dr. Moreau with me. Please.
I will if we're watching Island of Lost Souls.
Yeah,
Or
the
Lost
32
Souls, rather.
movie is
Lost
great.
Souls.
So, well, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad double feature.
Dude, Lost Souls is so good. I don't think I have rewatched a documentary in my life, but I would rewatch Lost Soul.
Because it's just such an insane story. Like it's so bonkers, and this one is
actually,
too. Like
Scott, yes, I will amend mine to your suggestion because I think you're right. I think that like the doc is much more exciting than the film itself. I saw the doc before I saw the film, so it's like. And Matt, what you were saying, if there was a documentary about all these people talking about fucking Supernova, I'd probably enjoy watching Supernova a little bit more.
Yeah.
If I watched the documentary first.
All right, Scott, how about you? What's your double
I mean,
feature?
I'm gonna go with Hellraiser 4 Bloodline because I mean it is the what's the term I'm trying to think of? It's like they made the argument Hellraiser in space. It is Hellraiser in space. Like it's no bullshit. It's literally what they were going for.
Which, to be fair, in 1988, when this was originally pitched as Hellraiser in space, that was a pretty novel idea, and Hellraiser had just the one movie at that point.
Yeah,
so you're like, I don't know what this is going to be. Now, in like 2024, you're like, we've seen that like 8 times.
Listen, if they do Hellraiser with the new Hell Priestess, if the new Hellraiser 2 that is in production goes to space, can you imagine how good that would be?
Look, I've said before that I still want, and I think they did it in the comic books, I still would love to revisit the building at the end of Hellraiser 3 and do a movie where, because the cube is now built into literally the floor plan of that office building, like Cenobites just tearing apart an entire office building because someone accidentally
But also have it be late 80s where basically
yuppie culture,
yuppies getting in their crisp white shirts with their suspenders and their terrible ties. Basically they all look like Patrick Bateman.
So when we say something and I see Kyle click his pen, I'm like, Kyle's getting ready to pitch this to somebody. All right, so I'm gonna make our night worse. That's right. I'm doing it because you know what?
You know he's doing it.
You know what this movie? You know what this movie felt like the entire time I was watching it?
What?
The 1998 Lost in Space movies starring Matt LeBlanc. It is that same level of what the fuck are we doing here?
Why didn't you
that. I love
triple
that for
feature
you,
with
Matt.
Wing Commander?
Yeah, like so I recently bought that Lost in Space because I was like at a Goodwill and it was like buy 3 DVDs, get the 4th one free, and for the life of me I could not find a 4th DVD. And I was like, let me revisit how bad Lost in Space is. Because in my mind, I thought maybe it would make a good Patreon pick. I will never, ever put you two through the pain that is the 2 hours and 10 minutes of Lost in Space from 1998.
2 hours and 10 minutes?
With some of the laziest special effects and computer animated stuff. And it's all too cutesy. This is the whole time I'm watching this. I'm like, I feel like I'm watching Lost in Space 98 again. And I think that's what I think secretly deep down, that's what MGM wanted. They wanted that movie.
That's where that other 30 million went, is to make Lost in Space.
Exactly. Now, while I won't make you guys watch that for Patreon, the Patreons can always vote for a ton of different movies for us to watch by going to patreon.com/HMN podcast. You can even vote on movies for us to talk about in future Patreon bonus episodes. Get tons of great conversations. Get some videos that you can see what we look like when we're recording. All types of fun stuff. And when you become a patron, you also pretty much love the show. So why don't you also go to hmnpodcast.com and get some swag and then hang out with us and chat with us on our Facebook and our Instagram, HMN Podcast. And lastly, it is time for some recommendations. Kyle.
Yeah.
What have you been up to? What do you want to talk about? What's going on?
I know we usually talk about things that we finished, but I've just started this book that I'll read before bed called The Bible. It's great, kids. I started reading. My wife got me a book called Devotion: Why I Write by Patti Smith, the musician, poet, artist.
Patti Smith from like
Patti Smith Group, like
Like the Warrior?
PATTI.
No, that's Patti Smythe.
Oh yeah,
yes.
I just thought he was saying it wrong.
Smith and a Patti Smythe.
Yes, not to be confused with Patti Smythe. No, Patti Smith, prominent punk rocker from that
The
sort
80s,
of like late
80s
70s.
new wave scene, yeah.
Yeah, and then into the 80s. I mean, Because the Night was probably like.
I was gonna say
biggest,
that's her
like,
big one. Because
okay.
the night belongs to
So, and that
lovers.
Easter's an incredible album. But she's an incredible artist all around. So this book is called Devotion: Why I Write, and it is just sort of it reads a little bit Hunter S. Thompson-y. It reads a little bit like this was a gig, like this was like an assignment that I was asked to write about why I write, and now I'm doing this sort of like diary-esque thing about my journey into writing. And I'm still really early on in the book, but it's a small book. It feels very diary journal sized, and it's fun to read an artist.
End of sentence. Oh.
Yeah, it's fun to read, period. It's fun to read about an artist that you enjoy and just see their inner workings. Like, I remember reading Bob Dylan's Tarantula one time, and I was like, I don't really like your poetry. Like, I was like, it's whatever. But to just see, like, what they do put into an adjacent art form to me, or like what I appreciate them for. I love Patti Smith's music. To see what they do put into an adjacent art form, writing, poetry, like sort of this whole journal thing, I really enjoy. So it's a nice little like thing to read before bed. It's just sort of very follow the conscious thing. It's very cool. I'm enjoying it so far.
Nice. All right, Scott, how about you?
This isn't recent. A couple weeks ago, I finished The Marigold, which it is by Andrew F. Sullivan, and the conceit of the novel is that it's based in Toronto, Ontario, in the near future. Climate change has basically led a lot of Toronto to become kind of swampy, and there is this stuff called the wet. It's kind of like a mold that is taking over some parts of the city in these high rises, but it's not. It seems to have a consciousness, and it's basically like consuming people. I found the book to be very interesting. I think that he would have done with better with a different editor, just because I felt like there was a little sliver, I would say 1/5 of the book that's at the 4/5 section. If you broke the book into 5 sections, like the 4th out of 5 sections, I could have really done without, because it just felt like it was padding for time. Because a lot of it is, so there is a core group of characters, and then there are other people that are kind of being consumed by the wet or are very tertiarily related to the Marigold, like the titular high rise where people are living, where the wet is like kind of consuming people the most. That is, I mean, I still enjoyed the read. I thought that it was really cool the way that he wrote. I'm finding that with a lot of these, and maybe this is just me as an adult, but I'm realizing with a lot of these authors that I'm coming into nowadays with their first or second, maybe third novel, I'm really learning a lot about the writer. You know, like I feel like they're putting, and maybe it's just this new generation of writers where I feel like they're putting a lot of themselves into the book. That said, this book feels like eco horror meets cyberpunk.
Nice. Okay.
It is a weird amalgamation of things. I just
had to like marinate on that for a second.
Yeah, like Snow Crash is the book that comes to mind. This is my all-time favorite cyberpunk book. I've never talked about it on the show because we don't really talk about sci-fi. I was huge into cyberpunk in high school. And so everybody knows Neuromancer. That's like the first cyberpunk book. I would argue that there's a significant impact of Philip K. Dick books from the 70s, like late 60s into the 70s, in the kind of foundation of cyberpunk.
I always thought that, like, what is it called? Ubic? UBI? Yeah, like I always feel like that has a lot of like early cyberpunk elements. And
Absolutely,
also,
that and the 5 Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch, which is my all-time favorite Philip K. Dick novel.
But even like,
no idea
very,
what the
very
fuck y'all
cyberpunk.
are talking about. This is so interesting.
But even like
Philip K. Dick is so good. He wrote The Androids. He wrote.
Well, that's what I was just about to
that's
say.
the only
Do
one I know.
Androids
That's-
Stream
He
of
also
Electric
wrote We
Sleep?
Can Remember That Wholesale for You, which became Total Recall. He wrote
Scanner Darkly was
Scanner
was a
Darkly. There are a bunch of his
That's so
shorts
interesting
that
because Piers Anthony did he do the novelization? Anyway,
Link-
but
Link-
cyberpunk is such a blind spot for me.
Oh, Total Recall.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Excuse me. Total Recall.
But I was
Yeah.
going to say, I mean, you could argue that so much of cyberpunk stems from like Blade Runner. Like, you know, I mean, like the movie
Well,
Blade Runner being like a very
I always
influential
thought
piece.
that,
Yeah.
but cyberpunk. So
Predates
Blade
that.
Runner is what year is
Like
cyberpunk?
81.
or 81? I believe that Neuromancer was 79. That
Okay,
book came
so
out in
it's like
79.
right there. So
Well,
it's just kind of in the same general.
Yeah, and I think that Snow Crash was 84, and I would call Snow Crash
interesting. Okay.
the perfect crystallization of all things cyberpunk. And so when I was reading The Marigold, I felt like I was reading eco horror written
Mixed with
by Neil Stephenson. It was
Nice.
really, really interesting.
I love that.
I wouldn't say that it's like the best book I've read this year, but I found it very interesting. I just wish that 4 out of 5, that one section, that second to last fifth of the book was either truncated or left out completely, because I don't feel like it added anything except for a page count.
Yeah. No,
Does that make sense?
That does. While we're talking about books real quick, this wasn't what I'm still going to very briefly talk about something, but as you know, I also produced the YAOK podcast for Geekscape.
What?
The day that we're recording this, we actually dropped an episode that I'm really, really proud of with a writer named Hannah V. Sawyer, and just talking about the important, you were saying about like how you get to know the writers themselves through how much they put themselves into their stories. She actually has a YA novel out now that's won quite a few of awards called All the Fighting Parts, and it's her retelling the story of her essay at the hands of the pastor at her church, and how she like stepped back, like fought that and all that stuff. But what I thought was, she was so open and honest and sincere and empowering to have on the show, but also her entire book is written in verse because she's a poet originally.
Wow.
So it's a book written strictly in verse. So I'm very excited to pick it up. Well, I'm not excited to read it, obviously, because of the heaviness of the topic, but I'm interested in seeing how that works out. But the thing I was going to talk about, speaking of YA stuff, is this weird little show that I binged on Hulu over the last week called Davy and Jonesy's Locker, which I can only describe as everything everywhere all at once in a high school.
Wow. You sold me.
It's about these two kind of outcast girls, like think like Romy and Michelle's high school reunion, like during the high school years, like just like two best friends, like absolutely obsessed with each other. Or even, I guess, Pen 15 is better. Think of the two main characters of Pen 15 and their science teacher, unbeknownst to them, has managed to speak to all of the multiverse versions of himself. And in
Is this
doing
a TV show or a cartoon?
TV show. It's like an actor's TV show. Wow. And he's trying to like break through all the multiverses so that he can like leap through them, but something goes wrong and the leaping device actually ends up inside their shared locker because they're such close friends. They use the same locker. So the show is like Quantum Leap style. Every episode they're in a different multiverse trying to get back to their own multiverse.
Wait, what's the title again?
Davy and Jonesy's Locker, like a play on Davy Jones's Locker.
Okay. Wow, this is incredible. I am absolutely watching this.
It's
immediately.
so goofy and weird. One of my favorite episodes is that they leap into a multiverse that is just like every teen drama known to man. So it's called Gilmore Dale, and it's like a school filled with vampires. It's like you shut your brain off, like, because it's not smart, but it's kind of in the same way that Beavis and Butthead was so dumb that it was brilliant. Like, that's how I felt watching this. I was like, this show is so stupid that it takes a very smart person to come up with ideas this dumb. But yeah, the first episode you'll know if you're in for the other 9 or not. But the 10-25 minute episodes, it's like chef's kiss. Just shut your brain off binge show. So can't recommend enough. I really don't hear anyone talking about it. That's one I found through the old TikTok because I literally, like, the only people I follow on TikTok are this one girl who does TV reviews and a guy who does movie reviews, and I just let them tell me what I should prioritize watching. I'm like, oh, they liked it, I guess I'll check it out. And speaking of things that you like and we think you should check out, not Supernova, but maybe next week's movie will fare better. Who knows? I picked it. Probably not. Stay tuned for more Horror Movie Night.
You've been lost in the woods for hours now, stumbling around in the dark. You come around the bend and see two people roasting marshmallows over a roaring fire. They see you coming into the clearing and gesture over to pull up a log. Welcome to Campfire Ashes. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jess. Join us as we tell each other our originally written spooky stories around the campfire and then dive into the lore and legends that inspired them. Is it something that goes bump in the night? Is it something menacing lurking past the tree line? Or is it just weird and otherworldly? You'll find it here on Campfire Ashes.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or right here on the Geekscape Network.
91 Donkey Lane is a magical apartment complex that contains immense power but lacks intelligent inhabitants.
What is happening?
I'm getting texts.
Why are we getting a lot of texts?
People found out what we did.
Oh, dividing Mike Myers into an infinite amount of tiny Mike Myers?
Listen to 91 Donkey Lane for free on Spotify or your favorite podcasting app. More at 91donkeylane.com. See you there, you donkeys.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.